The American Revolution was more than a war for independence. It was a profound rejection of a specific form of governance. The colonists had chafed under the distant, powerful hand of King George III and his Parliament, a system where authority was centralized and often exercised without their consent. In the crucible of this conflict, as they fought to sever ties with Great Britain, the 13 newly declared states faced the monumental task of creating a government of their own. Their primary goal was to build something utterly different from the monarchy they were dismantling. They envisioned a system where power resided closer to the people, firmly within the individual states they had fought so hard to establish and protect. This deep-seated fear of a strong central government became the guiding principle behind the nation's first constitution, the Articles of Confederation. Drafted by the Second Continental Congress, beginning in 1776 and finally ratified by all 13 states in March of 1781, this document was not designed to create a powerful, unified nation in the modern sense. Instead, it established what was explicitly called a firm league of friendship among the states. Each state was to retain its sovereignty, freedom, independence. Under the Articles of Confederation, the structure of the national government was remarkably simple and, by design, quite limited. The sole federal institution was a unicameral or single-chamber Congress. There was no president to act as a chief executive and no national judiciary to interpret laws or settle disputes between states. In this Congress, the states were treated as equal partners. Each state delegation received only one collective vote. Smaller states like Delaware or Rhode Island had the same formal power as large states like Virginia or Pennsylvania, reinforcing a partnership of equals. The powers granted to this Congress were few and very specific, focusing on diplomacy and national defense. Congress had the authority to declare war and make peace, to enter into treaties and alliances with foreign nations, and to maintain an army and to maintain a navy. It could also coin money, though the states retained the right to print their own currency as well, a provision that would later cause significant economic chaos. Furthermore, Congress was empowered to manage affairs with Native American tribes and to establish a postal service. However, the powers Congress lacked were far more significant than those it possessed. The most critical omission was the power to tax. The intentional weakness of the government under the Articles of Confederation soon proved to be its fatal flaw, creating a series of interlocking and debilitating problems. The most immediate and crippling of these was the inability to raise revenue. It had accumulated a massive debt during the Revolutionary War, owed to foreign governments like France, to American war bondholders, and to soldiers. The requisition system was a near-total failure. States failed to meet obligations, paralyzing the national government. Another glaring weakness was the lack of power to regulate interstate and foreign commerce. States treated each other like rivals, erecting trade barriers. New York taxed goods from New Jersey and Connecticut. Merchants faced a patchwork of regulations and taxes, stifling a unified national market. The absence of a national executive or a federal judiciary created a vacuum of leadership and legal authority. With no president, there was no single figure to represent the United States, enforce laws, or respond swiftly to crises. The government operated through committees, often slow, inefficient, and prone to deadlock. Without federal courts, disputes between states had no impartial arbiter and could fester. Finally, amending the Articles required unanimous consent, making the system nearly impossible to repair. The theoretical weaknesses did not remain abstract. They became crises threatening the young republic. Unable to pay revolutionary debts, the United States lost credibility at home and abroad. Foreign lenders saw a poor investment, an unreliable partner, hindering loans and trade. The failure to pay soldiers fueled profound unrest. Many held worthless certificates instead of hard currency. Without a funded army, European powers treated the nation with contempt. Britain violated the Treaty of Paris by keeping forts in the Great Lakes to influence trade and native relations. Spain closed the Mississippi to American commerce in 1784, and Congress was powerless to compel respect for sovereignty. The most dramatic illustration came with Shays' Rebellion in the winter of 1786 to 1787. Veterans and farmers, crushed by high taxes, debts, and foreclosures, shut down courthouses to prevent seizures. Massachusetts appealed for help. Congress had no money and no authority to raise an army. The state had to assemble its own militia to restore order. The spectacle sent a shockwave, terrifying property holders and horrifying leaders like George Washington and James Madison. It exposed that governments were too weak to maintain law and order. The lesson was stark. A stronger national government was necessary to prevent anarchy and civil strife. The escalating crises of the mid-1780s created a growing sense of urgency among many of America's most prominent leaders. That period showed clear cause and effect. The weakness of the Articles directly caused economic chaos, diplomatic humiliation, and domestic unrest. In 1785, Virginia and Maryland met at Mount Vernon over Potomac navigation, inspiring James Madison to propose a broader conference. The Annapolis Convention of September 1786 drew only 5 states, yet its delegates seized the moment. Alexander Hamilton and James Madison urged a convention to render the federal government adequate to the Union's exigencies. Initially lukewarm, opinion shifted dramatically after Shays' Rebellion galvanized the political elite. Washington's agreement to attend lent immense credibility. Congress sanctioned the convention. By spring 1787, 12 states appointed delegates, except Rhode Island. In May 1787, delegates gathered in Philadelphia to amend the Articles. Madison and Hamilton arrived with a more radical agenda. The Articles were irreparable. A new system was needed. Quickly, revision gave way to creation. Their secret deliberations produced the United States Constitution. It shifted the balance of power, granting the federal government its own authority independent of the states. Congress could lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, providing revenue to pay debts, fund a military, and act without begging states. The Commerce Clause enabled a common market and stronger foreign trade posture. One voice, not 13. The transition marked a fundamental transformation in American governance. The Articles created a confederation. Sovereign states kept ultimate authority. The Constitution established a federation sharing power, yet supreme in its designated areas. Under the Articles, a unicameral legislature with 1 vote per state. Under the Constitution, 3 branches and a bicameral legislature, House and Senate, with checks and balances. The President could veto. Congress could override with 2/3. The Articles' government was weak. It could not tax, regulate trade, or enforce its own laws. The Constitution granted taxation, commerce control, military support, and necessary and proper authority. Amendments became possible, yet rigorous. Broad support without single-state vetoes. The proposal of the Constitution ignited a fierce public debate, Federalists versus anti-Federalists. Hamilton, Madison, and Jay argued that energetic national authority, with checks and balances, preserved the Union. Opponents feared distant, overpowering government, a president like a king, federal taxes overwhelming states, and courts trampling local justice. Their strongest critique, the absence of a Bill of Rights. Federalists promised that the first Congress would propose amendments safeguarding liberties. That promise secured ratification. By 1791, the first 10 amendments enshrined protections into law.